Before humanity, there was a schema that wasn't entirely eradicated, but also not explicitly revealed. This schema wasn't contained in a single book, hidden in the chambers of a temple, or monopolized by a single doctrine. It was whispered in symbols in the Egyptian Book of the Dead, explained step by step in the Tibetan Bardo texts, implicitly present in Plato's allegory of the cave, and directly corresponds to what modern neuroscience calls layers of consciousness. It can be thought of as the hidden self-trinity diagram, as it shows a person having 3 different existences simultaneously. This isn't a location map. It explains where you live, in which cities, in which body. This map shows where your consciousness is locked. And for much of their lives, people live in the lowest layer of this map, without even realizing it's not a choice. In ancient traditions, this was called the ID. Today, psychology calls it the reactive mind, while neuroscience calls it survival circuits. The names change, but the mechanism remains the same. The ID operates through fear. Fear of loss, fear of exclusion, fear of inadequacy, fear of death. A person living at this level experiences life. They react to life. Notice that all modern systems are designed to feed this foundation, because a fearful mind doesn't question. A reactive mind is controllable. A constantly stimulated nervous system cannot progress to higher levels. Therefore, ancient texts imprison the ID. But the walls of this prison are not made of stone, but of conditioned thoughts. There's a critical point here. The id is not you. It's evolutionary software for humans to protect you. But this software, necessary for survival thousands of years ago, has become the biggest obstacle to cultural development today. What Carl Jung called the shadow continues precisely. Repressed fears, automatic reactions, and identities that aren't yours. But the hidden truth is, human knowledge is not 2-layered, but 3-layered. Above the ID, there is another layer that most people occasionally touch upon, but cannot linger in. Ancient texts call this the middle self. Modern science experiences it as the observing mind. At this level, one begins to become aware of one's own body. One is not immersed in one's emotions, but can observe them. This is something that meditators, creative people, and those experiencing awakenings after deep crises can sustain for a short time. However, the truly hidden layer is the 3rd layer, the higher self. But this isn't a mystical story, nor is it an unscientific fantasy. Modern neuroscience shows that in deep moments, the existing mode network quiets down, and a person's perception of self dissolves. Thousands of years ago, the East spoke of the melting of the self. The same experience, different language. There is no fear in the higher self, because fear requires a perception of time. It clings to something that will happen in the future. But the higher self operates in the present moment. Therefore, people at this level exhibit extraordinary calmness, a general openness, and an unwavering sense of inner direction. Buddha's serenity, Socrates' composure in the face of death, Tesla's preserved genius. These are not personality traits, but indicators of the level of consciousness. The latent self-triad diagram expresses exactly this. A person experiences life according to their conscious state. In the lower self, life is a struggle. In the middle self, life is a process of awareness. In the higher self, life is the realm of creation. And here's what's disturbing. The modern world constantly tries to keep you in the lower self. Constant talking, reacting, judging, comparing. Silence is dangerous, because in silence, the middle self is activated. From there, the transition to the higher self is possible. That's why silence was sacred in ancient traditions. That's why they kept certain narratives secret, hid certain names, and only showed symbols to those who were ready. This wasn't elitism. It was a method of protecting the nervous system. Modern science now confirms this. A constantly stimulated mind cannot create a deep and lasting impact. A constantly talking consciousness cannot hear itself. The hidden triad, self-diagram, is not a belief system. It's a map. It shows you where you're stuck. And most importantly, it tells you that the transition is possible. Reaching the higher self is not an escape. It's about truly experiencing the first moment of being here. In this process, a person no longer forms their identity based on what happens to them. They choose their identity. That's why these people don't trigger others, aren't easily manipulated, and don't lose their way even in chaos. And perhaps the most unsettling truth is this. This transition isn't as difficult as we think. The difficult part is allowing the ID to emerge, because the id wants you to think of it as you. If you let go of it, it disappears. But you don't disappear. Allow it to emerge for the first time. This information isn't new. It's just been forgotten. And its forgetting wasn't accidental. How does change actually happen? A journey to the higher self. Consider. You can observe events and emotions without being swept away by them. You can detach yourself from your thoughts, processing them separately. You don't seek external validation because this provides a deeper, more solid point of reference. Somewhere, you are aware of something that doesn't need the world's permission, your own inner growth. This is one of the most fundamental functions of the higher self. The higher self sees patterns that the lower self cannot perceive. You might perceive this as intuition, but in reality, the brain processes a vast network of information beyond the subconscious. Scientists call this cross-modal information synthesis, the capacity to make decisions by simultaneously processing data from different regions of the brain. Therefore, the higher self doesn't simply react to fears or desires. Rather, it produces an action born of inspiration. At this point, change stems not from fear, but from inspiration. It finds its direction not from despair, but from passion. This focuses not on fleeting pleasures or escapes from pain, but on the essence of existence. And ancient teachings distribute this through the four elements: earth, water, fire, air. But here not in the classical sense, but energetically and consciously. Earth doesn't trap you. It allows you to take root. You become stable, but not trapped and crushed by the material world. An existence that knows how to be stable and secure like Earth, yet also flexible. Water is not emotional chaos. It is a guide. Deep feeling is a necessity of the higher self. Emotions are no longer tsunami waves that sweep you away, but elements that carry information and signals. Neuroscientific research shows that emotional intelligence can be guided from the outset by advanced limbic systems. Therefore, water teaches not only to feel, but also to guide. Fire is passion and creative power, not uncontrolled anger or hasty ambition. Fire guides in the higher self. It becomes a creative, transformative, focused flame. The Heka powers of ancient Egypt, Pythagoras' theory of deep echo, and inner enlightenment in Buddhist teachings all emphasize this principle. Energy is shaped by intention. On the other hand, air is clear thought. It provides clarity and dispersion instead of scattered mental chaos. Modern neuroscience shows that in living individuals, prefrontal cortex activity increases, while the default mode network is silenced. Therefore, in the higher self, mental air brings order and focus to all complexity. The hidden self. Triad diagram illustrates this. The higher self does not flee the body, suppress reserves, kill desire, or cease thinking. Instead, it directs all these elements like an orchestra conductor. Ancient texts give it different names. Christ consciousness, Buddha is present, Atman, divine guides, immortal self. The names change, but the described state is the same, a state of consciousness free from fear and ego-driven reactions. The lower self is intertwined with conditioning and identities. Neuroscience has viewed this as a default mode network, filled with constant chatter, anxiety, and automatic responses. The higher self silences this network. Meditation, life experiences, psychedelics, and near-death experiences share the same neurobiological reality centers. At some point, consciousness completely frees itself from the limitations of the lower self. The diagram shows 7 main levels between the higher self and the lower self. This aligns with the 7 chakras, the 7 planets in ancient astronomy, the 7 stages in alchemy, and the 7 fundamental disciplines of the liberal arts. At each level, there is a transition in consciousness, a transformation in energy, an initial increase. From earth to water, the flames continue. One learns to change, to focus passions, and to make decisions with mental clarity. Fear and stress are no longer the guides. Instead, transience and wisdom are the guides. The higher self accepts everything as it is, but shapes it, directs it, to obtain a work of art sustained in life. It is possible to follow this in your daily life. Recognizing the capabilities of the lower self, observing them, and somehow directing them is the first step. Research shows that individuals who receive regular physical therapy and therapeutic practice experience a significant reduction in stress, anxiety, and automatic responses. This is a transformation verified according to instructions. In conclusion, change is not a type of transformation. It is a science of consciousness, an energy management, and a neurobiological reprogramming. Transitioning to the higher self is a union of fully conscious and protected wisdom beyond the limitations of fear and ego. Therefore, there is an unbreakable link between ancient wisdom and modern science. True transformation occurs only through observation. Step 1. Sacred pause. Transition from the lower self to the higher self. For most people, life is like an automatic cycle. Your reactions, what you produce, and what you expend are often programs of your lower self. You find yourself moving within this cycle without realizing it. This is the first step of sacred pause, forever. Awareness is recognizing the shadow play of your lower self. The lower self is invisible. It wants to keep itself automatic and under control. Modern neuroscience makes this clear with its default mode network. The constantly talking part of your brain is tightly bound to patterns that define you and make you feel safe. Awareness is cutting this network, stepping into the target of your automatic reactions. Ancient teachings also emphasize this. When Taoists speak of Wu Wei, that is distant inaction, they are describing an existence of inaction independent of the lower self. This means simply observing your thoughts, not getting caught up in them, and recognizing your true identity. Some Sufi texts show you step by step how to observe your mental shadows through transition and breathing techniques. The second threshold is the abyss. This involves letting go of your old personality. people are tightly bound to the characters and coping mechanisms they've become accustomed to. These mechanisms have been your lifelong safety net. But for the transition to the higher self, these nets need to be released. This process requires confronting death, dying, and fear. Psychological research shows that the person held during the transition experiences a temporary state of chaos, as the brain's limbic system sounds the alarm when structural elements are lost. But this chaos is a harbinger of reprogramming and the emergence of the higher self. Don't let the death of your old identity frighten you. Rather, this death is the birth of the higher self. The third threshold is integration. This means stabilizing the higher self. This shouldn't just be a peak experience, it should be the default state of your daily life. Neuroscience research shows that such integration experiences increase brain plasticity and restructure neural networks. This means that when wakefulness is consistently practiced, the automatic control of the lower self becomes stable and the connections become meaningful. The old schema is not just a map, it's an activation code. In ancient Egypt, self-actualizers activated their intentions through Heka rituals, using specific words and pauses. Pythagoras and his colleagues managed to translate the writing of spells in the correct rhythm into a material order. In Buddhist and Taoist traditions, pauses amplified by breath provide mental and energetic balance. Therefore, sacred pause is a fusion of ancient and modern teachings, focusing your intention with subtle pauses. When you put this into practice, a part of you remembers. The lower self may emerge, but the higher self has transcended dispersion. This remembering begins with small moments. Observe your thoughts. Breathe where you react. Pause for a moment. But over time, these brief pauses become ingrained in your actions. The effect of sacred pause is not only mental, it completely reprograms your being. Neuroscience shows that sleepy pauses increase vagus nerve activation, release stress hormones, and work with the parasympathetic system to strengthen inner balance. Thus, the impulsive reactions and fear life cycle of the lower self are guided and transformed through hiding and pausing. This technique is not merely a mental exercise, it is a tool that transforms your energy, consciousness, and behavior. Its secret is encoded in ancient texts. It is called sacred silence in Tibetan Buddhist texts, pausing with intention in Jain teachings, and mantra and pause in Vedic literature. All these cultures utilize the power of pausing as a tool for active shifts in energy and information levels. In conclusion, there are 3 steps to measuring sacred pausing. Awareness. Threshold. Notice and observe the automatic cycles of your lower self. Abyss threshold. Be ready to let go of your old identity and confront the unknown. Integration. Threshold. Balance your higher self. Make pausing the default behavior. Once you make this a lifestyle, your lower self is reclaimed, and your higher self is constantly engaged. Ancient teachings and modern science confirm this. Pauses create transformation, both mentally and energetically. They are no longer just a schema, but an active tool in your life. Each pause is a chosen preference and a code that guides those preferences. And when you decipher this code, you free yourself from the control of your lower self and begin to live in harmony with your higher self. Step 2. Witness mode. From the lower self cycle to higher self-awareness. The higher self has always been there, hidden beneath layers of conditioning and fear. in the shadow of all the patterns that taught you dimensionlessness. Since childhood, your lower self hasn't limited you. As survivors of reactive thoughts and automatic behaviors, you may have defined who you are. But it has concealed the true power of your higher self, the power you need to remember. And now, it's time to remember it again. Some of you might be thinking, that sounds great, but how am I going to do it? How am I going to overcome the obstacles? Yes, our old thought patterns reflect this habit. Throughout years of development, you haven't seen the higher self as possible. But the secret isn't tied to complicated rituals or mystical guides. It's full of solid, tried and verified techniques, regardless of whether you believe in old schemas or not. Modern science confirms this. Neuroscience shows we can discriminate between hidden automatic responses. Our brain's reticular activation system stores information based on our presentations, but observation can override this filter. Psychology reveals that consciousness isn't just about observing thought, but also about the emergence and reprogramming of a response. Witness mode is a method of actively using this skill. 1. Recognizing the cycle. The lower self operates on autopilot. It works in a constant cycle, from triggers to reactions, from behaviors to responses. You get angry when someone cuts you off in traffic. You worry when you see your bank balance. You become defensive when you are criticized. This cycle is your lower self's survival mechanism. However, witness mode allows these automatic reactions to be disrupted and interrupted. In ancient Buddhist texts, this is described as vipassana, observing the nature of everyone and everything, being aware of being affected by them. In Sufi teachings, this is called muraqabah, where one observes their inner scene momentarily, without judgment or reaction. These practices have been used in distant lands for thousands of years. 2. Taking on the role of witness. The essence of witness mode is to observe instead of react. This disables the brain's automatic responses. So how does it work? Modern neuroscience shows that awareness activates the prefrontal cortex and suppresses amygdala triggers. In other words, it allows you to make choices while waiting by disabling the fear and anger-based reflexes of your lower self. In ancient texts, this is explained with different symbols. In Taoist and alchemical teachings, it is suggested that you observe yourself from a distance, like the moon reflected in a pond. Observing without interfering with the reflection is a method of fixing memory and connecting with the higher self. 3. Observing the energy. The witness mode is not only unique but also has its own content and observations. Anger, rage, or fear are not a controlling wave affecting you. When you passively observe them, you can direct and transform them accordingly. In ancient Egypt, individuals directed their emotional and mental behavior through symbolic rituals, word and pause, shifting authority and reprogramming space. Modern psychology achieves this. Observing emotions reduces amygdala activity in the limbic system, activates the prefrontal cortex, and prolongs the decision-making time in a long-term position. Therefore, witness mode is both a mental and energetic reprogramming. 4. Intention and focus. The most powerful aspect of witness mode emerges when combined with determination and focus. While your lower self reacts automatically, your higher self observes. In ancient Tibetan texts and Vedic literature, purposeful observation is an active orientation used to direct information accurately. This is also consistent with the characteristics of modern quantum psychology. Conscious observation influences probability waves, directing your behavior and experiences. So witness mode is not passive monitoring, but on the spot and purposeful observation. Instead of getting angry in traffic, noticing their speed and not reacting is an action. Instead of approaching your bank balance with anxiety, observing it in the moment increases your financial well-being. Conversely, not reacting to criticism fuels aggression and inner strength. 5. Applying to daily life. Here's a simple but effective way to use witness mode in daily life. Pause for 3 seconds in response to the triggering situation. Observe your feelings and thoughts from a distance. Remember your intention. I am observing and reacting to this moment with my higher self. Redirect the energy. Focus instead of anger. Clarity instead of anxiety. Step 3. Heart activation. Transitioning from reactive cycle to choice and higher self. The lower self is often a defense mechanism. It produces automatic responses to protect you. These trigger anger, anxiety, or fear. While these responses may seem harmless at first glance, subconsciously, they can strengthen your lower self and trap you within your own limitations. This is where heart activation comes in. Breaking down defenses, moving from seeing the response to observing, and acting consciously under the guidance of the heart. 1. Pausing. Between stimulus and response. Modern neuroscience shows that reacting instantly to a stimulus activates the automatic reflexes of the amygdala and limbic system. This becomes a habit that supports short-term survival maneuvers while limiting your long-term choices. The prefrontal cortex, the center of your metacognitive thought and will, can only be activated when a pause is created. This pause is simple, but powerful. 3-person breathing. When faced with a trigger, perhaps a message, criticism, or a source of stress, pause instead of reacting immediately. Breathe and observe. What is happening within you? Notice without getting caught up in analyzing emotions. In ancient texts, this is called standing on the threshold, or being in the breath interval. Taoists have used it as Wu Wei, creating permanently through the power of stillness. Tibetan Buddhists practice observing the void during change, a year-long period spent at home between breaths and thoughts. But modern neuroscience calls this activation of the executor, a cognitively sustained process. This pause breaks the autopilot of the lower self. While reactive patterns may seem like natural reflexes that meet your expectations, they are merely habits and programs. With heart activation, a space is created to rewrite these programs. 2. Observing from the heart activation is not just a mental pause. It is also a process of energetic and emotional change. You act as a bridge between your heart, your consciousness, and your emotions. Ancient Indian teachings say that the heart directs the functioning of the central mind, Anahata chakra, and that this is key to connecting with the higher brain. In Christian mysticism, union with God or divine guides through heartfelt prayer and communication is based on the same principle, integrating mind and emotion with the heart. In this process, triggering emotions like anger or anxiety are not obstacles, but contain information. Observe the components, notice them without identifying them, and direct them to your heart. Anger can be transformed into focused energy, anxiety into hidden awareness. Ancient alchemists structured the individual both mentally and physically by transforming this heat. Modern psychology and neuroscience confirm that emotional stress separates amygdala responses and strengthens the prefrontal cortex. 3. Hands-on practice. daily triggers. You can start tonight with a small experiment. Choose a trigger whose actions repeat. This could be your phone notifications, a specific person, or emails you constantly check. At each trigger moment, react, pause, breathe with all three eyes. Observe what is happening within you. Respond infinitely to what comes from your heart. These simple yet powerful steps, when repeated gradually for 3 days, interrupt automatic reactions, allow the lower self to continue, and make your higher self your default state. 4. The meeting of witness mode and heart activation. Witness mode and heart activation are complementary. Witness mode allows you to observe without distinguishing between thoughts and feelings. Heart activation elevates this observation to an energetic and emotional level. Together, they emerge from your higher self independently of the lower self. This is a technique practiced years ago, gathered in ancient Egyptian rituals, Tibetan changes, and Vedic texts. 5. Scientific support and modern application. Recent neuroscientific research shows how breathing away from the heart and lower self balances the brain's limbic system and prefrontal cortex. At the same time, the psychology literature reveals that the metacognitive range can emerge and change reactively. Therefore, psychotherapists use breathing techniques and prolonged metacognitive therapy, MBCT. Because pausing and observing in response to triggers reduces automatic responses and creates space for free choice. 6. The power of heart activation. Heart activation encompasses not only the mind, but everything stemming from life experiences. You break free from the control of reactive patterns. Anxiety, anger, and fear transform into energy. Conscious and inner observation not only frees you from your reactions, but also allows you to shape your life in a more creative, purposeful, and passionate way. Practice this progression in some way for 3 days. Pause at the trigger point, breathe, observe, and respond from the heart. As automatic reactions weaken, your higher self naturally emerges. This is the expression of the ancient sages, activation code, and modern science confirms it. Hidden observation and heart awareness rewrite the subconscious program. 4th step, the ego death perspective, breaking free from thoughts and reaching the higher self. The human mind often wanders in its own prison. Thoughts, emotions, and past experiences become recurring cycles of the lower self. These cycles make you defensive, reactive, and sometimes helpless. However, ancient teachings and modern science whisper the same truth to us. You did not come into existence as the content of your mind. You are who you are after their emergence. 1. Detachment from thoughts. The ego. Death perspective. Ego death, while seemingly a simple concept, represents a profound life. In Buddhist practice, it is known as vipassana. It is about holding and observing, like clouds in the sky. Stoics advocate mindfulness. They want a person to freely see the event they are experiencing with their own reactions. Christian mystics, in their prayers and practices of silence, aim to unite with God by transcending the boundaries of the ego. The technique is this: sit for 5 minutes today and observe yourself. A thought will appear in your mind. What should I not do tomorrow? Or, this anxiety left over from yesterday. Do not interfere with these thoughts. Do not take control. Do not judge them as good or bad. Just observe and notice. But there is an important nuance, a linguistic shift. Instead of saying, I am a failure, or I am anxious, say, thoughts of failure have arisen in my mind, or I will notice that anxiety will arise. This subtle linguistic difference breaks down the mind's ego-based automatic responses and activates your capacity. 2. The neuroscientific basis of awareness. Modern neuroscience confirms this practice. During observation, the prefrontal cortex is activated and provides metacognitive support. The limbic system's automatic responses are less triggered thanks to its brightness. Thus, you can become a slave to your thoughts and feelings and create a space where you can transform them. Neurologically, this process operates on the normal mode network, DMN. The DMN, deep mind, allows the mind to constantly analyze itself and its past. It works on ego and ID errors. The perspective of ego death calms the DMN, strengthens the prefrontal cortex, and establishes balance between the higher and lower selves. 3. Heart awareness. The bridge of consciousness. Simply observing the mind is not enough. In ancient texts, the heart acts as a bridge between the lower and higher selves. While the Egyptians viewed the heart as the center of culture, Hermetic writings suggested that the heart could be used as a mechanism that tightly guided culture. Modern science confirms this through studies of heart rate variability, HRV, and heart-brain synchronization. The heart regulates rhythmic metabolism, emotional and mental balance, and softens the reactive ID. By observing your heart, become aware of the ID's automatic responses. Anger, anxiety, or fear contain only energy and information. When you observe and transform these, your higher resistance can be used as a creative and hidden force in this environment. 4. Practical exercise, 5-minute ego death. Sit comfortably, close your eyes. Watch your thoughts like clouds in the sky. Allow them to appear and disappear. Observe your thoughts without judgment. Instead of saying, "I am anxious," say, "I am aware of the anxiety." Focus on your heart. Observe your breath and heart rhythm together. Even if your thoughts distract you, you will return to your chosen modes. By practicing this exercise for 5 minutes, you will interrupt your mind's automatic reflexes and create a bridge to access your higher self. 5. Ancient wisdom and modern harmony. This technique was compiled years ago from Hermetic schools, Tibetan monasteries, Vedic exchange systems, and Christian mystical practices. However, modern neuroscience, psychology, and consciousness research confirm it today. A common theme has emerged in studies on meditation, mindfulness, near-death experiences, and psychedelic science. Through observation, under supervision, and from the heart toward infinity, the ego is destroyed, and access to the higher self becomes possible. 6. Unexpected transformation. The ego's perspective on death is not merely a method of change, it's a life practice. When you experience that your thoughts and feelings are not you, the tyranny of the mind ends. You become free. Combined with heart activation and continuity, a natural harmony is achieved between the lower and higher selves. This harmony is not just a short-term experience. It can become a continuous state. Every thought and trigger becomes an opportunity to activate your higher self. Automatic responses, anxiety, and anger will no longer flow. Instead, freedom of choice, creative energy, and profound peace will flow. Methods of full activation. Accessing the higher self and conscious awakening consciousness often functions as a self-limiting mechanism. Stress, fear, and anger trigger automatic responses from the lower self and unleash the brain's potential. However, science shows that when the heart rhythm is regular and controlled, the brain's capacity for intuition, innovation, and access to the higher self significantly increases. Decades of research by the HeartMath Institute have proven that heart-brain alignment elevates levels of consciousness and activates the parasympathetic nervous system. Step 5. Heart alignment and gratitude. This technique is simple yet incredibly effective. Sit comfortably. Place your hand over your heart. Breathe slowly. Inhale for 5 seconds. Exhale for 5 seconds. Imagine directing your breath to your heart. Then cultivate a genuine sense of gratitude within yourself. This could be for a precious moment, a person, or an experience. This process unifies and integrates your heart rhythm. Physiologically, this practice reduces the sympathetic stress response, strengthens the parasympathetic resting nervous system, and activates the vagus nerve. As cortisol levels drop, the brain releases DHA and neurotransmitters that increase neuroplasticity. The result? Your prefrontal cortex is activated, and your higher self comes online. You can now make decisions aligned with your values and inner wisdom, rather than in the anxious and reactive mode of your lower self. Step 6. Death meditation, crossing the abyss. Ancient mystery schools taught their children to die before death. This accelerates access to the higher self by resolving the worldly anxieties of the lower self and ego. In modern psychology, this is called awareness of transience. Practice. Lie down in bed and imagine the end of your life for a week. Think openly and honestly. How did you spend this time? Who did you interact with? What anxieties would you have been freed from? This allows the false appearances of the lower self to surface and the true values of your higher self to emerge. While Buddhist practices involve integrating parts with the body to experience the transience of life, Stoics purge themselves of worldly anxieties through negative visualization. Ancient Egyptians secretly incorporated reminders of death into their lives to heal through the judgment of the soul. All these practices create temporary growth and focus attention on what is truly important. 7th step, invoking the higher self. Every ancient tradition had methods for invoking the higher self. Prayers, mantras, chants. Modern neuroscience makes this possible through neuroplasticity. The brain perceives repeated chants as real experiences and reorganizes the nervous system. Practice. Stand in front of a mirror and say aloud, "I am not the voice of fear in my head. I am not that. I am not my conditioning. I am the observer of all this. I am the higher self that has always existed. I am connected to eternity. I am worthy. I am powerful. I am here." The ego will initially resist. This is normal. Resistance is for those who are working on the right path. When this practice is done repeatedly and with faith, it reshapes your personality, changes ingrained behavioral patterns, and allows you to align with your higher self. 8th step, purification, fasting, and mind reset. In all ancient traditions, a form of purification is possible to reach a higher level of political awareness. This can be a physical or mental fast. Modern science confirms the link between the exit and the brain. The exit microbiome has a direct impact on mood and systemic performance. Short-term fasting or dietary restriction during sleep allows for the cleansing of the nervous system and the support of higher self states in the brain. This process increases attention and focus by eliminating unnecessary stimuli. 9th step, sensory orientation and energy awareness. The higher self works in harmony with the senses and energy. The merging of thoughts, feelings, and gains makes hidden choices possible. Simply observe and transform your sensory experience. Transform states of anger and fear into intuition, excitement into creative transformation. This approach is similar to the transfer of fire section in ancient alchemical teachings. Fire is destructive when you cannot control it. It becomes a creative force when you transform it. 10th step, full activation and daily integration. Now all techniques are brought together. Sleep in the heart, death change, summoning, purification, and energy awareness. Integrate these into your daily life. Call upon your higher self in the mornings. Stop triggers during the day and keep the system functioning. Become aware of the programs of your lower self and transform them with heartfelt gratitude. Make temporary changes before sleep and clarify your appearances. This holistic approach ensures the integrity of your brain, heart, and spiritual awareness. Neural pathways are reorganized, your behavioral patterns change, and your higher self becomes constantly accessible. Ancient texts, modern psychology, and neuroscience come together to create the power of these methods. Continue moving towards your true self. This is now only possible. It is in your hands. Why does resistance arise? The weight of consciousness and the ascent of energy. Why can't people stay in the same place even when they want to change? There is information, there is intention, even desire. But a visible wall pulls it back to its original state. This wall is called resistance, and this resistance is not just mental. It is also related to the body, chemistry, nervous system, and energy. Modern science now states very clearly, consciousness cannot be produced solely in the brain. Today, neuroscience confirms that approximately 90% of the serotonin hormone is produced in exit cells. That is, your emotional state, your decisions, your motivation, and even your intuition are directly related to your digestive system. The main pathway providing this connection is the vagus nerve. The vagus nerves regulate heart rhythm, breathing, and brain waves from the exit cells. Now, realize this. If your body is constantly dealing with heavy, hard-to-digest interruptions, your nervous system remains in survival mode. A mind in this mode cannot transition to consciousness. This is not new information. This is forgotten information. Ancient Egyptians practiced rituals beforehand because they knew that consciousness rises when the body lightens. Jesus fasted for 40 days before beginning his ministry. Buddha remained in silence and simplicity before enlightenment. Yogis and Taoist masters experienced that detachment increased mental clarity. Their hormones were unbalanced, but they knew the outcome. Because fasting isn't just about not eating. Fasting redirects energy. Digestion is one of the processes where a person expends the most energy. Energy is released during this process, and this energy either eliminates fear or leads to awareness. The simplest practice for new licensees is this: 16-hour intermittent fasting. You break the fast after dinner. Until noon the next day, you only drink water, plain coffee, or tea. You observe what happens during this time. The mistake is this: most of the desire to eat isn't real hunger. It's the lower self's craving for relief, escape, and stimulation. It usually occurs when you react impulsively, sometimes spontaneously, and that's where the transformation begins. A 24-hour water fast once a week is recommended. Studies show a significant increase in mental clarity after the 18th moment. Ancient texts called this cabin cleansing. That is, getting rid of the fatigue you constantly experience. At this point, resistance increases. because the control of the lower self hasn't been broken yet. And that's where the perception center comes into play. The structure called the third eye in ancient traditions is known as the pineal gland in modern science. Descartes called it the center of the soul. Today's pineal gland is extremely sensitive to light, produces melatonin, and surprisingly, produces images similar to DMT. DMT is a molecule associated with mystical experiences. Ancient people possessed this molecule. However, they knew the practices that activated the pineal gland. That's why they had dark retreats. That's why they performed night rituals. That's why they used candlelight, divine sounds, and breathing techniques. A simple but effective practice. Sit in complete darkness. Cover your eyes with your palms. Make sure there is no light at all. Focus your attention on the space between your eyebrows. Breathe slowly. Imagine a purple or indigo light there. Continue this for 11 minutes. Ancient texts did not give this duration randomly. There's a threshold for the nervous system. Sometimes colors are felt, sometimes pressures, and sometimes nothing is felt. It doesn't matter, because the goal here is not the result, but to open the way. Support this in the following way. Get blue light 2 hours before bedtime. Sleep deeply. Get sunlight in the mornings. The pineal gland needs darkness and natural light. Features of ancient practices include alternating breathing through the nostrils, details at a refreshing frequency, dark shifts, visualizing light along the spine. These are not superstitions. These are scientific technologies discovered through experience. And now we come to our most critical limit. The eighth technique, transforming energy from bottom to top. The Hermetic principle states, as above, so below. In alchemy, the transformation of lead into a name is symbolic. What is actually explained is this: fear, anger, sexual energy, survival. These are not non-existent. They are transformed. Energy does not disappear. It only changes direction. When an emotion transforms into two, there is a path: responding from the lower self or transforming from the higher self. The next time you experience an intense emotion, stop. Close your eyes. Feel the location of this emotion in your body. Chest, knee, throat. Now breathe. And with your breath, imagine the energy rising from the bottom of your spine to the top. The energy in your breath lightens, transforms, rises. Tantric practices, Kundalini yoga, and Taoist inner alchemy do exactly this. They transform the base energy into conscious energy. This is why resistance arises, because this transformation requires the continuation of your old being. But when it is resolved, a part of you is remembered. There is no turning back. Living from the higher self. The transition from reaction to creation. Living from the higher self is not a passive state of peace. It's not about escaping life or accepting everything as it is. Therefore, it is the art of using a more advanced form at the same level as the higher self. When fear arises in the lower self, this fear often turns into escape, but the higher self transforms fear into empowered processes. When anger arises, the lower self directs it towards outbursts, suppression, or blame. But the higher self directs that same anger towards judgment in the name of justice. The energy is the same. What changes is the cultural level at which it is applied. Psychology explains this very clearly today. The lower self is a variant of the more primitive regions of the brain: threat perception, quick reactions, capacities. The higher self is connected to the prefrontal cortex, meaning-making, long-term thinking, ethics, and empathy. Therefore, living from the higher self is not a mystical belief. It is a measurable state of the nervous system. The ninth technique, perhaps the one that allows us to see the end, the practice of creating an endpoint beyond the illusion of separation. The lower self perceives as me and others. This produces possessiveness, isolation, competition, and loneliness. But the higher self, through direct experience, realizes we are not separate. This is not a philosophy. This is a livable experience. The simplest but most powerful method for tonight is this: sit under the sky. It doesn't matter if it's day or night. Lower your head and look up and remind yourself your body is made of the same elements as the stars. The iron in your blood was formed billions of years ago in a supernova explosion. The calcium in your bones was also once there in the vastness of time. Science confirms this. As Carl Sagan said, we are stardust. But it's not about knowing, it's about feeling. The entire process takes 10 minutes. Thoughts like, I have things to do, this is pointless, I shouldn't waste my time, are directed directly to the experience, towards the sky, towards the breath, towards being present in the body. Ancient practices aim precisely at this: contact with nature, sitting with trees, watching the sun wash the leaves, stepping on them. These aren't romantic ideas. These are biological realities that regulate the nervous system. Modern neuroscience shows that when people experience unity and connection, the default mode network, that is, the network established with the ego and ID, decreases. At the same time, it continues to expand and become active. This is measurable, it's repeatable, and it's trainable. Now we come to the most critical point. Technique 10, daily integration. Because the higher self is not a momentary peak experience, it is a way of life. All the techniques given to you are working, but only with ease. The programming of the lower self is powerful because it has been repeated over the years. The nervous system is the host of the known person. It doesn't matter if it's good or bad. New ways require repetition. Here's a simple but effective daily structure. Morning, 5 minutes. Immediately after waking up, before looking at your phone. Set your plan to act from your higher self today. 3 minutes of heart rate focused breathing exercises. Afternoon, 3 minutes. A sacred break before dinner. Observe your mental and emotional loss without judgment. Remember your intention. Evening, 7 minutes. Review the day. When did you act from your higher self? When from your lower self? No judgment, only temporarily. A brief death exchange with the "Is today meaningful?" game. Before bedtime, 5 minutes heart rate focused breathing exercises. Thank you. Even in dreams, the goal is to reach a higher self. Total, 20 minutes. The times you get lost on social media are much less, but the impact is exponentially greater. Now let me tell you the result honestly. At the end of this path, you will fall back. One day, you will feel it very clearly. You will say, that's it. The next day, you will return to your old level. You will make a decision out of fear. You will get lost on your phone for an hour, and your inner voice will say, it didn't work. I'm back. I failed. This is not a mistake. This is the process itself. The ancient alchemists called this the problem of dissolution and reunification, dissolve and recreate. A new identity cannot be built without dissolving the old identity. This path is not a straight line. It's a spiral. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Now let's look at the obstacles we need to avoid. First obstacle, the id's last resistance. In psychology, this is called an extinction burst. An event intensifies temporarily and then disappears. You've lost control of the id. This creates drama. It creates doubt. It says, "This is nonsense. What should you do?" Don't fight. Observe. This resistance belongs to the people you're moving forward with. Second obstacle, loss of comfort. The nervous system relies on certainty. Uncertainty creates anxiety. Solution: don't try to change your life overnight. Take small, step-by-step measures. New neural pathways are created. Third obstacle, social pressure. People become uncomfortable when you start to change, because your change reflects their lack of change. Remember this: it's impossible to convince others by living from a higher self. What matters is setting an example. And in the end, you realize life is no longer happening to you. Life is flowing from you. That is what it means to live from a higher self. Your next step: transitioning from knowledge to life. After moving into history, you will experience this: mystery schools, enlightenment traditions, ancient teachings, and modern consciousness studies converge at a single point. However, this point is not, as most people think, an escape from reality. On the contrary, the goal is not to step outside of reality. It is to be fully in the midst of reality with all your senses, with all your consciousness. It is not to transcend humanity. It is to be fully human for the first time. Zen masters say, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, continue chopping wood and carrying water. It is not life that changes. It is the consciousness that lives it. This generation has given you a map of where your dimension can go. It has shown you the path from the lower self to the higher self. You have seen how your nervous system works, how your consciousness contracts and expands, how fear and conditioning govern you. But now, you've reached a very critical threshold, because interacting with information and storing it are not the same thing. Modern neuroscience clearly explains this. The brain changes not only with what it understands, but also with repeated behaviors. Reading, listening, saying "yes, that's right," weakly regulates the nervous system. But what truly initiates neuroplasticity is action. So right now, you have two paths before you. The first is very well known. Watching this video, getting inspired, saying "beautiful." And then, when you arrive, the subconscious easily pulls you back into learned patterns. The second is uncomfortable, but rewarding, drawing a single small action from this information. The old masters knew this very well. That's why there were initiation rituals. There were promises, vows, commitments. Because the human mind knows this. Information that I don't act upon won't change me. Carl Jung expresses this in modern terms. To avoid falling into the subconscious is to avoid fate. Therefore, if you don't act, life will drag you back into your old automatic routine. That's why I want you to do something now, not tomorrow, not when you're ready, not someday, when everything calms down. Now, choose just one of the practices described in this video. It can even be the easiest, the shortest one. But promise yourself that you will complete it tonight before you go to sleep. Don't leave it in your mind. Make it concrete. Set a reminder for details, not in your mirror. You can choose someone you trust, because behavioral science shows that when an intention is shared with others, the probability of it happening increases significantly. The nervous system perceives it as real. This first step is very small. But in psychology, this is called performance. Once you've overcome this, it's not so easy to go back. And know this: this transformation isn't a momentary enlightenment. It all happens in an instant. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Sometimes clarity, sometimes confusion. But the difference is this: you now possess knowledge. Ancient texts knew suffering very clearly. Suffering isn't the hardships experienced. Suffering is unlived potential. A person suffers when they carry something they haven't lived, even if they have. And this suffering constantly transforms into a silent weariness. But now you are recognized, and knowing brings responsibility. Your higher self is nothing new. Its time had come. It was simply suppressed under conditioning, fear, and noise. Modern psychology calls it the true self. Ancient texts call it true nature. Science sees it as a state of consciousness that defines it. The names change. The truth remains constant. That self awaits you, patient, silent, but powerful. Now, one final question remains. Will you use this video merely as a consumer, or as someone who will apply it from tonight onwards? If this video gave you a map of its dimension, if it connected with what you were looking for, please specify the features included in this price. Ancient knowledge was never created to be hidden. It was created to be passed on, from teacher to student, from awakening to awakening. And finally, remember this: the voice of fear in your head is not you. Your past was not you. Your conditioning is not you. You are the consciousness that can perceive all of this. And this increases your power to shift the level of consciousness you can experience. The lower self keeps you small, safe but incomplete. The higher self liberates you, takes responsibility. And real life begins right here. The dimension of choice, but time, always now.